Hi there, welcome back to The Aging Grace. My name is Andrew Blakey, your host, and today we've got a topic that, in my opinion, is one of the most important ones when it comes to talking about progress in the gym or in your workouts at home. So have you ever felt like you're putting in the work, you're doing everything right, yet somehow you're stuck? You go to the gym, you work out at home, you eat well, you stay active, but nothing seems to be changing. It's frustrating. But here's the truth. You might be working hard, but if you're not tracking your progress, you're essentially flying blind. And when you're flying blind, you're far more likely to plateau, lose motivation, and eventually, knock on wood, quit altogether. Think about this. If you don't track your finances, how do you know if you're actually saving money? If you don't check a GPS when you're driving, how do you know you're getting closer to your destination? Well, we can break this down. We can say, well, I just know. I just know that I'm doing this, right? And next thing you know, 3 hours later, and you realize you're going in circles trying to get closer to your destination. Well, the same logic applies to fitness. If you're not measuring what you're doing, how do you know that you're actually improving? When we think about it and we break it down, the most successful athletes, the fittest, strongest, healthiest people, the people that we look at and we say, oh, I want to look like that when I'm older. They all have one thing in common. They track their progress. Not because they're obsessed with numbers, but because they know that progress isn't always obvious. And the longer that you're involved with fitness, the more you actually want to dive deeper into your numbers and learn more so that you can progress, not necessarily faster, but more effectively. So these people, they use data to confirm what's working, adjust what's not, and stay motivated even when they don't feel like they're improving. So today, I'm going to show you why tracking your metrics is one of the most powerful things you can do for your fitness. And by the end of this episode, you're not only going to understand why tracking is so important, but you'll also know exactly what to track and how to do it, and how to use that data to guarantee long-term success. So there's a lot in this, but I believe that if you stick around to the end, you're going to pick up a lot of stuff along the way that's going to really help you make your journey with exercise more effective. So let's get into it. So before we talk about tracking, let's talk about why so many people struggle with progress in the first place. Now, I think that most people believe or think that fitness success is just about working harder. But I think the reality is that your body adapts to what you repeatedly do. And if you're doing the same thing over and over without increasing your intensity, changing the variables, or measuring results, progress slows down. And there's actually a term for this. It's the adaptation plateau. It's when your body gets used to the stimulus and stops responding. Very nerdy, right? But the worst part about this is that most people actually don't even realize it's happening. So let's go over an example here. Let's say that you've been lifting the same weights for 6 months. Maybe you feel like you're still working hard. It is still difficult. But if your strength isn't increasing, if your reps haven't changed, if your rest periods haven't improved, guess what? Your body has stopped adapting. You're not progressing anymore, even though it feels like you are. And this is where tracking becomes your superpower. When you track, you can create a clear roadmap of what's working and what's not. You take the guesswork out of your training, and you make decisions based on facts, not feelings. And there's one more piece I really want to touch on here, and it's that if you're going to the gym consistently, then give yourself a pat on the back. As much as this episode today is about improving your journey and improving the effectiveness of your journey with exercise, I don't want to underplay how hard it is to start implementing fitness into your routine. So if you've been doing that, then give yourself a pat on the back. Today's episode is about what is the next step for you if you're somebody who has been consistent and you've been going to the gym, you've been working out. What's that next step that's going to allow you to progress even better? And that's what this topic today is all about. That's what tracking is about. So why does tracking work so well? Why does writing down a few numbers make such a big difference? Well, let's go over what the science says. Now, I don't want to bore you too much with the science, but it is important for me to mention that there was a systematic review that essentially looked at all the different data that we have for people that use fitness trackers. And they found that on average, people that used activity trackers, similar to the ones that you have on your wrist, had actually increased amounts of activity compared to those who didn't. And this isn't me saying you need to go out and buy a fitness tracker. That is not what I'm saying at all. But what I do want to convey to you is that just by the simple action of knowing that you're tracking things, it has an influence on your decisions that you make in your everyday life, such as going for walks, or in this case, in the gym. Knowing that you're tracking things will have an influence on the decisions you make regarding how much weight to lift on a certain day and how many reps to do. And I think that it's incredibly valuable to know that and have that influence on the way that you push yourself when you're working out, either on your own or with a trainer. What do you actually track? And what can you ignore? And I think that this is a really important piece here, because oftentimes when people start tracking, they want to track everything. But I actually argue against that. Because again, when it comes to sustainable fitness, we want something that you can stick with. And so let's go over a couple different metrics that you can track, and you can pick and choose which ones work best for you. Now, these first ones I highly, highly recommend, because these are kind of the core fundamentals of tracking. And so there's strength training metrics, meaning that it's tracking the weights lifted or your resistance used. It's tracking the number of reps that you did for an exercise. It's tracking the number of sets that you performed of an exercise. And there's optionally the rest periods. But the goal is to ensure progressive overload, which basically means lifting a little bit more over time. And so when it comes to strength training metrics, tracking your weight or your resistance lifted, your reps and your sets is going to allow you to visualize how you are progressing in strength over time, essentially allowing you to ensure that you're getting this progressive overload a little bit more, and at least a lot more compared to if you're flying blind, like how we mentioned previously. Now, when it comes to cardio metrics, if you are a walker or a runner, some of the things that you should probably be tracking is how far you went, and I would even say arguably your heart rate throughout. Now that one can be a little bit more difficult, but just kind of really hone in and listen to your body as you're going through it, and listen to what your body is telling you. Are you able to, run from, 1 block close to your house to 3 blocks without feeling gassed and tired? Or are you able to go a little bit further without feeling that same discomfort? The same thing goes for walking. Are you walking, 3 kilometers and you're feeling like it was a tough walk by the end of it? Or are you able to start going a little bit further without that same measure of fatigue? These are all things that you can be focusing on and listening on. But I think a lot of times we actually kind of neglect listening to our body just because we're thinking about so many other things at the same time. So I really encourage you to start hearing what your body is telling you as you go through these workouts and being really present with your workouts. Now, another thing that you should be tracking is your recovery. Now, recovery is, in my opinion, almost just as important as your actual workouts themselves. Now, one of the common reasons for plateaus is because we're not creating an environment for our body to heal and to thrive and to progress in strength based on the things that we're doing. Now, for example, if you're somebody who is, lacking sleep, you're not drinking enough, you're stressed all the time, it can be really, really hard to see progress in the gym. Now, you compare this to somebody who's, sleeping their 8 to 9 hours, they're drinking lots of water, they're managing their stress levels. And more times than not, even if these two people are doing the same workouts in the gym, the person who is sleeping better, they're hydrating better, they're eating better, they're actually going to have noticeably different results compared to the person who is not. Now, this may be obvious, but I just really wanted to point that out. Now, you don't need to track everything, but focus on the numbers that matter for your specific goals. And I think that when it comes from an aging perspective, from a longevity perspective, which is what this podcast is all about, then if you're somebody who's looking at longevity, then we need to look at your strength, right? Because strength is going to be one of those things that as we age generally decreases with age, as well as muscle mass. And so if you're able to look back at your numbers and see that your weight lifted, number of reps you're doing, the number of sets is actually increasing, especially as we get older, then you're putting yourself in a really good position for being able to enjoy all the things that you want deep into the aging process and helping you to stay independent. Now, your numbers won't always go up as you're getting older. If we have been working out for years and years and years, then there's a good chance that our numbers will decrease with age. But I mean, on the other hand, if you've never been working out before and you're just getting started at working out and doing fitness and doing resistance training at 50, then your numbers are likely going to increase because, again, we're learning how to use that muscle better. It's just a different starting point, and one isn't superior than the other. Obviously, looking back, I wish I'd have started working out when I was 20 or when I was 30, but it's never too late. And tracking is going to allow you to just see how your numbers are progressing. And so we've figured out what numbers that we're tracking. It's the weights lifted, the resistance used, your reps and your sets, or if you're a walker, then how far you're going and listening to your body a little bit more. But how do we track without overcomplicating it? Now, there's a couple different ways that you can do it. You can use something as simple as a notebook and write down, what exercises you're doing and how much weight you lifted and how many reps that you did. And then the next time you're going through a workout, say next week, and you're doing that same workout again, you can look back at your results from the last work and be like, hey, I did, 40 pounds for 12 reps. You know what? I'm going to try to get 14 reps today. I'm going to try to get 13 reps today. And it might not seem like a lot, an extra rep or two, but if you're doing an extra rep or two, every single time you go into the gym, then next thing you know, you're going to be doing 15 reps with that same weight and thinking, oh, you know what? I think it's time for me to up my weight a little bit. And then you do it again. You track your reps and your weight and so on and so forth, right? And so this is one of the ways that I like to track is either with a notebook or you can actually use a special app on your phone, a special application. Now, there's lots of different apps out there where you can track your progress. Personally, the one that I use is Trainerize, and I use this just because this is the same app I use with all of my clients. I track every single rep, exercise, and movement that they ever do when we're working together. And it's because it allows me to gauge where they're at a little bit more effectively, and it allows me to ensure that they're progressing over time. Now, another way that you can track without overcomplicating things is by simply taking a monthly progress picture. Take a picture of you in the mirror, and I think that the scale can sometimes lie. Just because our numbers and our weight goes up so much and can change so much day to day. And so I am a big fan of measuring weight on a scale, but I prefer a zoomed out lens. So we don't necessarily look at the day to day. We look at the week, by the month by month to get a little bit more of a true picture in what your weight and what your body and how it is changing over time rather than looking at the day to day. Now, the last thing that you should be doing to track your progress without overcomplicating it is setting small measurable goals. Now, once you've got a system in place where you're tracking your exercises, whether it's a notebook or an app, you're taking your monthly progress pictures just to kind of give you a little bit more of an in-depth view on how your body is changing. And the next step is to set small measurable goals, which is going to help you to improve your motivation in your workouts as well. So, for example, say I've been doing a dumbbell. I'm going to bring it back to the dumbbell chest press again here. Say I've been doing a dumbbell chest press and I'm doing 12 reps with 10 pounds. Well, you know what? Maybe it would be a good idea to set a goal of trying to get to 15 pounds for that number of reps. And, then you want to set a time to it. So I want to increase my chest press from 10 pounds with 12 reps to 15 pounds with 12 reps in 6 weeks. Now that gives you something to work towards, which is going to make your experience in the gym just a little bit more focused and a little bit more exciting for you as well. So tracking isn't about obsessing over the data. It's about making sure that you're moving in the right direction. That's what all of this is all about, is ensure that you're moving in the right direction with a little bit more intensity behind it. So some of the biggest tracking mistakes to avoid, I'm going to mention these quickly and then we'll kind of close off what we got here today because I know that it has been a lot. But some of the biggest tracking mistakes to avoid is actually tracking too many things. We want to keep this simple. Track your reps, your amount weight lifted, your sets. Track some of your recovery metrics such as how much sleep you're getting, how much water you're consuming. And those 5 things in and of themselves is one, it's going to keep you busy, but two, it's going to give you a really deep dive into how your body and how your progress is changing over time. The second biggest tracking mistake I see is only tracking scale weight. Now, weight fluctuates, so focus on other areas as well, such as your strength and your performance. Now, obviously, if your sole goal is weight loss, then you really, one, you don't really need to be in the gym. The gym gives you a whole host of other benefits that losing weight won't give you those same benefits. So tracking your weight is good, but make sure that you're also tracking areas such as your strength and your performance during your workouts to give you a little bit more of a well-rounded picture. And lastly, the biggest mistake I see, one of them is not reviewing your data. Tracking is useless if you never look at it. So make tracking a habit and not a chore. The goal is consistency, not perfection. Like every podcast that I say is the same thing, where our goal is to be consistent with exercise, not perfect. So again, I know that there was a lot in today's episode, so here's the final truth. If you want to stop spinning your wheels, if you want to guarantee progress, if you want to stay motivated even when results feel slow, then start tracking. It doesn't have to be complicated. It just has to be consistent, because success isn't about working harder. It's about it's about working smarter. And the only way to work smarter is to measure what matters. So let me know. Do you currently track your workouts? What's worked for you? DM me or drop me a comment on Instagram at I am Andrew Blakey, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on today's episode. Till next time, this is Andrew Blakey, The Aging Grace.